Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Perfect Score. This is episode 5, and today we're going to take a look at the Red Unstable Mastery deck core. This is another one of the newer NZ Masteries. New, I guess, by reference point, I guess. It's one of the oldest NZ cards, but new as far as overall masteries. It is from NZ Set 1. It says you cannot win by the most powerful personality victory. The first time you gain anger each combat, you gain twice the amount. When you reach 5 anger, you may advance or lower your main personality 1 level. Your red style attacks deal +1 life card of damage. So you get a permanent damage mod, and it's a life card mod, which is awesome. You get double anger once per combat. Pretty sweet. And then the really cool thing about this one is leveling up or down. Now obviously you can't level down if you're already on 1, so you can't use this to like infinite stay on 1. But if you go from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 1, or 2 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, you can kind of go up and down the chain, as opposed to a red deck that just like gets right up to the top and just stays there. You get a little bit more of a journey with this mastery. Lets you really get creative with some of the ways that you would build your deck and the MPs that you would use.
So speaking of MPs, when you're looking to build a deck with Red Unstable, the key is MPs that perform attacks or have abilities on every level, right? So you don't want to be leveling to something that has a bunch of winner and combat abilities. So the couple of main choices, the obvious ones, Gohan. Gohan has an attack on basically every level if you build your stack that way, so you can bounce around and throw attacks. Majin Buu, of course, he has attacks on most levels, and he also can get to 4 and 5 and rejuvenate a bunch of cards for you, which is very strong. One that's taken the league by storm lately has been Android 17. His level 3 draws 2 cards if you have the Vayne in play, and then his level 4 is a big attack. So bouncing between those two are good. And there's some more narrow personalities. You look at somebody like Spice. So, Spice just got 2 big energy attacks, so you can build Unstable in a lot of ways. And just basically any kind of deck that all of your levels do something active and immediately and affect the board, like that's where you want to be on Unstable. I will say that the last one to throw in is Aransu. Although she does have a, quote, when entering combat ability, her ability also registers when you reach the level. So leveling up and down with her is also very strong. So that's kind of just the different variants. You'll know if you want to play Unstable, but generally speaking, if you're going to play Unstable, you want an MP stack that has actions that they can do in the middle of combat. You don't want a bunch of when entering combat abilities or anything like that. You want active abilities that are useful in combat.
Yeah, if you're going to level and get to a guy with a new action, this mastery really is just increase the number of actions that you get to take in a turn. Mm-hmm. And if you go to a guy who doesn't get an action that you can trigger, that sort of wastes the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So speaking of making sure that you get to do so, we don't normally talk about senseis, or at least have them printed in the core, or haven't so far. But this one, most of the time you're going to play Goku Sensei. You want to be fully in control of your ability to level. You don't want to be stopped in doing so. You don't want to be slowed down by anger prevention cards. You don't want to be lowered up or down against your own terms. So having Goku Sensei around to just make sure that you have final say over where you're going with your anger makes a deck like this really sing. And so, where a normal deck, it might not be as obvious what sensei you're going to play. And because we're talking about a sensei, this deck actually does have a couple of kind of uniquely sensei deck things to it. Well, the first one I'm going to talk about is Bulma's Ultimatum. This is a card from the newest NZ set. It has a parenthetical that you can't choose. Like obviously cards that stay in play or Dragon Balls, because of course you can't. But you choose 5 of your cards that your opponent has in play or under a card in play. Your opponent puts them into 2 piles. You pick a pile and then they shuffle it into their deck. They keep the rest of them. And then if Vegeta's in play and is in your MP, it ends combat. That part doesn't happen all that often. But, I mean, I guess there is, more Vegetas being played than ever, so like you might get a combat ender out of this. But really, Red doesn't have a lot of cards that kind of like address everything. Your removal stuff has to get really specific. If you want, like, I want to hit a drill, well, you need like a specific red card. If you want to hit an ally, you need a specific red card. Stuff like that. Like, there aren't a ton of cards that give you like that kind of net. So Bulma's Ultimatum makes a lot of sense in red to just be able to say like, oh, you got a whole bunch of types of things I want to get rid of. Okay, or if you've got one like specifically problematic thing, I can just get rid of that. It just feels really, really good in a lot of decks, but it feels especially good in red and extra good in unstable, where you just want to make sure that you don't have anything standing in your way of getting the leveling and stuff that you want. And we have two battleground cards listed here. We have Dismal and City and Turmoil. These don't have to be the two you pick, but something kind of unique to Unstable is that there isn't like a obvious location that you play. Goku Sensei kind of covers your like weakness that you might have into winter or something like that. So you don't have like this huge urgency to replace it or something that you might with other decks. So what you end up doing is you end up playing kind of like this sort of toolbox Sensei deck location thing, where instead of taking the slots in your deck, you just run those with cards that further push your anger strategy, and then can Sensei in the one that's relevant. So we picked Dismal and City because those are the two like biggest obvious hoser cards. City says non-combats can't be used. You're not going to be playing a lot of non-combat stuff because you're leveling, so you don't have any drills or anything like that. You might have a couple nons here or there, but drills you're not worried about. And so using City to stop a deck that will feel good. And in Dismal Future, of course, players can't have more cards than 4 in their hand, and if they search their deck, search top 6 instead. Red doesn't do a ton of search in its deck, hardly any, and you don't typically have a large hand size. You might play a red axial kick or something to replace it with something else, or a critical blow to draw a card and replace, but you're not like plussing cards in hand hardly ever. So Dismal just feels really good in red decks as well. So those two are just the ones that we picked to kind of represent that you have some freedom over what you choose to put here. But if you have other things that like other decks that you're worried about for whatever meta you're going to play into, it might make sense for you to play something else in this spot. But it's just nice that you have the option to not play one main deck and can kind of slot in whichever one feels right.
So from there, let's talk about the red staples. First of all, Red Energy Blast. Red Energy Blast is a 3 of in basically every red deck, no matter what you're doing. Energy attack, remove a defender, drill, or ally, raise your anger 1. Obviously, most of the cards you're going to put in this deck are going to say raise your anger some amount for obvious reasons. Axial Kick, of course, big attack, get another card. Essentially, Red's draw a card here. Of course, it raises anger. Critical blow, same way. Chance to raise anger, and a chance to add another card to your deck. These are kind of the big 3 red cards that you're going to play in most red decks. They're all very strong in their own. They all raise anger, so they all contribute to the cause here. And notably, like Derek said, with Dismal doesn't really hurt you because most of Red's quote unquote draw effects are things like this where they're just replacing themselves. So you can really afford to just play Dismal or whatever. It hardly ever affects you. But the red staple cards, like Derek said, are not actually very good at like catch-alling, which is why Ultimatum's so good. Energy Blast is very specific. A lot of the cards you're going to play in this deck do like attack, raise your anger 1, do one other thing. So, you need some catch-alls to definitely cover the bounds. But these 3 are kind of the big 3 red cards as far as attacks go that you're going to see in most decks.
And that leads us then into the block package. Some of this stuff is pretty staple for red as well. If you want anger in red, which you'll do in 99% of red decks, red blocking hand is just the obvious good one. Stages and 2 anger. Awesome. If you use this and it's the first time you get anger, your unstable mastery will make it gain you 4 anger, which is crazy. Red Energy Redirect is a newer NZ card as well. Stops an energy, raises your anger 1, and then in your next attack phase, it performs the same attack. If you have the stages, of course, to pay for it. And then your opponent skips their next attack or attacks phase. So this is kind of like a Goku or Trunks swiftly moving, but then they skip as well. The idea is that they shoot an attack at you, you bounce it back at them, and then you get to do your turn. So that's why they skip. But just like a staple energy block, it gives you an attack, it gives you an anger, and it sort of gives you 2 attacks in a row. Just feels good. You're going to play this in almost every red deck anyway. So you're of course going to play it here where it doubles your anger, and it's still great. Impenetrable Aura just came out and is already like red staple status. It is the transform block that red was missing. It stops an energy or a physical. It gives you an anger if you want. And then if you declare Tokuwaza, you may transform this card as though it was a physical combat card. So it's just super easy to transform. It's an omni block you can pull out whenever you need it, which red like sorely needed. And giving them a transform block in general feels really, really good. So it doesn't matter what red mastery you're playing. The fact that this is like you may raise your anger means that you're going to play it in literally every single red deck. And then kind of unique to this deck is Power Down. Not a red card, but it stops a physical, and then if your main personality is above level 1, you can have them lose a level to have this stay on the table to be used one more time. So if you're on, say, like level 4, you could use this to go to 3, and then use it to go to 2, and use it to go to 1. And so you have this like kind of repeatable block. So in a deck that's going to like level itself up or down, which you're going to be doing anyway, you then have an MP that's built into wanting to be on each of its levels because they all have attacks or whatever they're doing. Power Down is like, okay, fine, I'll go up to level 4 naturally like I would have, or 3 or 2, and then I'll use it to level down, which will give me another attack action because my level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 have attacks on them, and then I can keep leveling with my red cards, keep moving up or down with other things. I'll use the red cards to just level like you normally would with anger, and then I'll just use this floating on the table Power Down to power back down. So you can really string like a good turn together with typical red anger stuff and the doubling once a turn from unstable, and then Power Down to just free up additional actions and multiple blocks. There are a lot of times where your opponent might just choose to stop attacking you when Power Down's on the table, because every time they do, you're just going to get a whole nother personality power attack out of it, and that's a pretty scary thing. So that block suite is like, there's not a lot of like, oh, I wonder if I should play this. These 3, yes, you're going to play, and this one, like if you're playing unstable, you're going to put it in there.
So I want to talk about the little sidebar real quick. Most people don't know what the Sensei deck package is: Red Aerial Force, Red Brawl, Red Annihilation. That is a package that you can choose to include or not to include in this deck either way. If you choose to include it, there is an argument to play Red Clap over Red Energy Redirect. I can kind of go either way with that. You know, it makes sense to target the Sensei deck stuff, but the anger you get from Energy Redirect is so much more valuable and unstable that even if I'm on that package, I'm probably still on Energy Redirect. Also, the amount of times that your opponent just like prep crashes or plays some generic energy with an anger that you're going to get to raise your anger 1, maybe 2 with Red Energy Redirect, and then perform an energy back, raise your anger again. It's super valuable in this deck. So, talk about more specific cards to this mastery. Red Overbearing Attack. Red Overbearing Attack is kind of the poster child for Red Anger. It's physical +4, raise your anger 2. Obviously, if it's your first anger this combat, it'll be raise your anger 4. But basically, it just kind of harkens back to all of the 2 anger cards, right? Like, you can play Trunks Makes Himself Clear, and, you know, some of these other Captain Ginyu's Energy Attack, and some of these generic 2 anger cards if you want. They will give you 4 anger off of Unstable, which is valuable, but you kind of got to balance, like, how good or bad those cards actually are versus what your deck is trying to do. Like, if you're a physical beatdown deck, I don't love playing things like Captain Ginyu's Energy Attack, but this card is great. Overbearing Attack always fits in those decks. It always does exactly what you want it to do. If you're red and you're gaining anger, you probably got Overbearing Attack. It's a pretty strong card. So, more specifically to this mastery, next is Red Quiet Fury. Red Quiet Fury is a newer card. It's NZ cards combat. You can lower yourself a level, and if you do, for the remainder of combat, your attacks do +2 life cards of damage, and then at the end of combat, you raise a level. So, what this is I've kind of view it as replacing itself, right? So, if you've built your deck correctly, all of your personalities are going to have powers that are useful. So when you use Red Quiet Fury, you're going to be on your level 4. You're going to use your level 4's power, whatever. Then you're going to Quiet Fury. You're going to go to level 3, and then you're going to do your level 3's power. So this is essentially just letting you, go down to level 3 to use your level 3's power. But it also adds +2 life cards to all your attacks. So you're getting a little boost, a little life card boost, and you're getting the flexibility of moving up and down a little bit more often. So that you're getting more action economy. So I kind of view this card as, like, what it is it's one of your main personality's attacks, but it also makes your cards do +2 life cards, which is pretty beneficial. Bouncing levels is super important in this deck. you can lower this, you can lower yourself a level with this card, and then level up to go back and use your level 4 power again, or use the same power you came from twice, which is also valuable. So this deck is all about jumping levels. So like I said, if you built this correctly with your MP, and your MP is somebody that has a lot of damage or a lot of attacks or at least a lot of action economy on each level, you're going to get a lot of value out of Red Quiet Fury. The last card I want to talk about is Red Contemplation. It kind of doesn't seem like it fits the style of the deck very much. You will bring in City quite a bit, but it's a card you should at least consider. So it's a when entering combat ability, raise your anger 1. Most of the time, this is going to be your first anger, so it's going to trigger to raise your anger 2. And then you get to look at the top X cards of your deck, X your anger, and put any of those on the bottom. And then put the remaining on top in any order. If your anger's 3 or higher, you draw a card. So if you enter combat with 1 or 2 anger, you play this card, you're going to get to draw a card to replace it. So you're going to gain 2 anger and draw a card. Immediately, that's an incredibly powerful effect, right? But even if not, just getting the 2 free anger will help you, bounce a level sometimes if you need to. If you're on 0 and you just need to get out of this, get out of the bad spot you're in or something like that, the card can give you just 2 generic anger for whenever. But when you play it and you're on 1 anger or 2 anger and you go up to 3 or 4 and you get to basically do a scry of 3 or 4, look at these cards. I take the one I want, and if I want to draw any of the rest of them, I'll leave them. Especially when entering combat as the defender. They enter on you and you go up to 3 anger. You look at the top 3 and you're like, okay, well I want these 2, so I'll put this one on the bottom. I'll draw those 2 and then draw 2 more. Like, this is an incredibly strong effect. It is a little difficult to play right. It's a tough card to get to know exactly what the sequences are, but it's incredibly strong. So it's something to consider. Again, I know that this is not going to be for everybody, and playing the random generic non-combat other than your Fatherly and Expectant Trunks in a deck where you're probably not playing non-combats is a little weird, but it's at least something to consider.
It puts in a surprising amount of work. It's every time I've seen this used, I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. It takes us to the last little pile of cards here. These are just your sort of anger physical that does a thing. Your mastery will care about making them double angers if you get to, but face slap, your opponent can't use his personality powers, constant combo powers. Everyone knows why that's good. And then you just get an anger off of it, which means it could be 2. Crushing Dive also represents kind of the same thing, where it's an attack for damage that gives you an anger, maybe 2, and then lowers your opponent's anger, gets rid of an ally, gives you stages. Everyone knows why Crushing Dive is good, but these 2 cards kind of represent this, in a deck like this, where you do have the potential that your cards can have their anger doubled, once a turn. Having these kind of physicals that give you an anger that also do something powerful or supportive feel extra good here. Even more than they normally would in any other given red deck, where you might play these anyway just because anger and leveling, but this one's now they're extra juiced. So you'll just consider a lot of these kind of cards as you're looking over stuff when building a deck. For Unstable, you're any card that might have normally felt pretty good because it's some kind of attack and does something I like but also gives me an anger, now just feels extra good. So a lot of those will be on in your pile of stuff to whittle down when putting this deck together, and these 2 just represent kind of the peaks of those big supportive effects. Critical Blow, I guess, is the same sort of thing. Obviously that's more staple, but is a great example too of just card that's already great and now is even better. This mastery just does a really good job of taking things that you might have already played and giving you a little bit of an extra reason to do so. And if not, something that might have normally not made the cut because it was just about good enough is now suddenly oh no, now that's a 2 or 3 anger card that is really kicking. Nick mentioned earlier with your kind of 2 anger cards with overbearing attack, you can do your red double strikes and stuff. That gives you 3 instead of 2 if it's your first attack. And so there's just a lot of fun ways that you can really juice extra anger out of this mastery from cards that might have already been good, and it makes the cutting room floor for an Unstable deck kind of wide, actually, because you end up having all these cards that are normally sort of good and are now actually quite good. So it's just a fun mastery to build for. It makes you think a lot about um, the overall value level of the red cards and even free stock cards that you're putting into the deck.
Yeah.
Oh, any last
So
words?
yeah. So when you're building, again, the key to this mastery is to make sure that your MP does what you need it to do. It needs to have action economy on every level that you're going to be bouncing between. If you're playing a level 1 that maybe doesn't have it, but your 2, 3, and or 4 all do, you can work with that. I mean, I've played this deck a lot with Spice. Just when they're in combat, just draw a card as an activated ability. Energy on 2, energy on 3. Like, this doesn't have to be a physical deck. You can go the energy route with it too. It does add life cards as a modifier, which is great. So just make sure that your MP and the choices that you're making are all about trying to get the most action out of every single card that you possibly can. And sometimes it's okay to take an attack that you could stop, so that way you can perform your personality power attack before you level. That way you can get more action economy. Red struggles a lot with getting enough actions in each combat. So you really have to pick and choose your spots to block, pick and choose your spots to level, de-level. That way you can make sure you're getting the most action economy.
That's a super good point. That's another one kind of in the books. The Red Unstable Mastery is really fun and lets Red do some things it doesn't normally get to do. I mean, it's still leveling, but in a really unique way. I think if you've not played Unstable, you'll have a blast playing it if you even ever enjoyed any kind of like Red MPPV type strategy. This lets you do it in such a really fun way. Transforming is such a huge part of the show, and this really, really showcases it. That's it for episode 5 of Perfect Score. We'll do another one of these for another mastery coming up with episode 6. And until then, see you next time.